Something historic just happened in Japan, and unless you're watching Asia closely, you probably missed it. In a surprise snap election held in the middle of winter, Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party didn't just win, it absolutely dominated. And in doing so, it handed Prime Minister Takaichi one of the strongest political mandates Japan has seen in decades. Now, this isn't just a domestic political story. This election fundamentally reshapes Japan's posture toward China, the United States, and the entire security landscape across the Indo-Pacific. So today, I want to break down what actually happened in this election, explain why Prime Minister Takaichi's risky gamble paid off so spectacularly, and most importantly, explore how this changes the geopolitical balance of power in East Asia, especially when it comes to China. On February 8th, Japan held snap elections for its lower house of parliament. The result was nothing short of extraordinary. The Liberal Democratic Party, or LDP, stormed to victory, winning more than 300 seats out of 465. Together with its coalition partner, the Japan Innovation Party, the ruling bloc now controls over 2/3 of the lower house. Now, why does that 2/3 number matter so much? Because it gives the government the power to override any vetoes from the upper house, where the coalition doesn't have such a commanding majority. In practical terms, this means faster legislation, fewer internal roadblocks, and a prime minister with real freedom to govern. Markets expected an LDP victory, but nobody predicted this level of dominance. What makes this result so remarkable is just how risky the whole thing was. Takaichi called these elections very early in her tenure. She did it in winter, amid rising inflation pressures, and with Japan's public debt already at eye-watering levels. Historically, Japanese prime ministers avoid calling snap elections under these kinds of conditions. It's just too dangerous. But Takaichi made a bet. She gambled that her personal approval ratings, her assertive leadership style, and general voter fatigue with a fragmented opposition would be enough to carry the day. And that bet paid off, big time. Voters responded to her image as a decisive, nationally focused leader who isn't afraid to challenge old taboos around defense, spending, and China. This result effectively silences critics within her own party, and all but guarantees she'll remain in office until at least 2028. So, if the LDP won so big, who lost? And why does it matter? The biggest loser in this election wasn't some fringe party. It was the Centrist Reform Alliance, or CRA. This was a last-minute merger between the Constitutional Democratic Party and Komeito, the LDP's former coalition partner. On paper, this new alliance should have been a competitive force. But in reality, voters just weren't convinced. The alliance lacked a coherent identity, a compelling leader, and a credible alternative vision for the country. The LDP's massive gains came almost entirely at the CRA's expense. This matters geopolitically because there is now no effective parliamentary brake on Takaichi's foreign policy agenda. She has a clear runway. So, what exactly does Prime Minister Takaichi want to do with this powerful new mandate? She's expected to move fast, and her agenda rests on three main pillars. First is defense. She is a strong supporter of accelerating increases in military spending. This means more investment in missile defense, cyber capabilities, and much closer operational integration with the United States military. The second pillar is the economy. Takaichi is openly pro-stimulus. She's pushing for higher government spending, tax cuts, including a temporary cut to the food consumption tax, and heavy investment in strategic industries like semiconductors and artificial intelligence. This will likely give a boost to Japanese stocks, but it also puts pressure on government bonds and the yen. And the third pillar is China. This is arguably the most consequential shift. Takaichi has consistently argued for years that Japan has dangerously underestimated the strategic threat posed by China, not just militarily, but economically and politically as well. And now, she has the votes to act on that belief. So, what does this election really mean for China? First, expect tough rhetoric to harden into actual policy. Under previous prime ministers, Japan often talked tough on China but moved cautiously. Takaichi is different. She sees ambiguity as a weakness. So, we can expect to see more explicit references to Taiwan in Japanese security documents, greater coordination with the US and Australia in the East China Sea, and more frequent Japanese naval and air patrols near contested areas. Second, economic security is now becoming strategic policy. Japan will actively work to reduce its reliance on Chinese supply chains, restrict sensitive technology transfers, and subsidize domestic and allied production in critical sectors like semiconductors and advanced manufacturing. This isn't a full-blown decoupling, but it is a very deliberate de-risking. And third, Japan's red lines are about to become much clearer. For Beijing, this is an uncomfortable development. A Japan that is wealthier, more militarily assertive, and politically unified is much harder to intimidate. China now faces a less ambiguous US-Japan alliance, a Japan more willing to absorb potential economic retaliation, and a government in Tokyo that firmly believes deterrence requires visible, credible strength. Of course, there's also the US angle to all of this. Takaichi's first major foreign test will be her state visit to Washington on March 19th. The timing is crucial. The United States wants reliable allies, more burden sharing, and partners who are willing to confront China without hesitation. Prime Minister Takaichi fits that bill perfectly. We can expect close alignment on everything from Taiwan contingencies and technology controls to the overall force posture in the Indo-Pacific. But there is a trade-off. A stronger Japan will expect the US to treat it as a true strategic equal, not just a junior ally. This will be a new dynamic in the relationship. Now, despite this overwhelming mandate, Takaichi still faces constraints. For example, revising Japan's pacifist constitution, especially the famous Article 9, remains unlikely in the near term. That would require two-thirds majorities in both houses of parliament and winning a national referendum. Public opinion is still very cautious on that front. And economically, Takaichi's stimulus plans are really just buying time. They don't solve Japan's massive debt problem. Pressure from the bond market will continue to build. So here's the bottom line. Japan's election wasn't just a landslide, it was a strategic reset. Sanai Takaichi now governs from a position of rare political strength. She will use that strength to harden Japan's stance toward China, deepen its alignment with the United States, and redefine Japan's role as a frontline Indo-Pacific power. This doesn't mean conflict is inevitable, but it does mean that the era of strategic ambiguity in the region is fading. And in geopolitics, clarity cuts both ways. Thanks for watching. If you found this analysis helpful, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next video.